Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are continuing our coverage for week one of the 2025 college football season. College football is finally back, and I could not be more excited for it. Here in this episode, we are going to be breaking down the Friday main slate of DFS. DraftKings has given us a 7-game slate, so we're going to break it down and tell you everything you need to know about all these 7 games and all the 14 teams playing in it. And then we're going to tell you who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups for those games. If you're looking to make bets or player props for these games, then all this information should be very helpful for you as well. Now, we've been talking about kind of the last few weeks how kind of using metaphors for food for the first few weeks of the college football season, right? And in week 0 was kind of like the amuse-bouche, kind of get the palate ready. The Thursday slate's kind of like the appetizer, kind of like your chips and your dip or your pretzel bites or something like that. Well, Friday, this is kind of like the soup and salad. Like, this has some real substance to it. This has some real games of consequence to it. And these are some fun games. And I'm looking forward to breaking them down for you guys. One of them is very near and dear to my heart. And then Saturday, obviously, is the main course, the steak and potatoes, the wings and fries, however you want to do it. It's the main course, right? We've got our video for Saturdays out now, so make sure you check out the channel feed and go check that out before the Saturday slate starts. That one's a little bit longer than this one. This one's going to be a little shorter because a lot of these teams did not release official depth charts, which makes my job a lot harder. So when there's less information to share, right? So this one's probably going to run a little bit shorter, but hopefully still give you guys everything that you need to know to build some winning DraftKings lineups here for this slate. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can be with us for all of our content for the rest of the college football season. We've got a live show coming your way on Thursday night for the week 1 main slate. So if you're subscribed, you won't want to miss that. So make sure you check that out. Ask any questions if you got them. Talk about the Saturday main slate. But that's going to do it for the intro. Let's go ahead and dive into this Friday night main slate. All right. So game number 1 is the one that is very near and dear to my heart. It is App State taking on Charlotte. Look, I'm a proud alumnus of UNC Charlotte. Go Niners. But this does not shape up as a home game for them, even though technically it is, right? This game is being played at Bank of America Stadium, which is in Charlotte, but it's about 30 minutes from campus for UNC Charlotte. And App has a much larger living alumni base than Charlotte does. And App's alumni base is crazy about football because they've had football and been a proud football program for decades, whereas Charlotte has only had football for 12 years now. And I was there when it first started. And yeah, App's going to fill this stadium. This is going to be like an App home game. So don't buy into this being a home field advantage for Charlotte. This is going to be like an App State home game. Anyway, the spread on this game is currently App State minus 6.5 points with a game total of 50.5, meaning the implied score is about 28-22 in favor of App State. And again, y'all, we don't do decimal points for implied scores because you can't score 0.5 points on a football field. Also, all lines are courtesy of our friends at ESPN Bet. Now, let's talk about this App team because I'll be honest, y'all. I've got a bet on Charlotte to cover, and that's not just me being a homer. It's kind of me being a little bit of a doubter on this App State side. So they've got a new coach, Dowell Loggins, who was South Carolina's OC last year. Y'all, it's not like South Carolina was running things that were very innovative and creative last year. It's just like, hey, Lenoris, go be an athlete. And that was kind of their offense. And now they've got an entirely new roster. They ranked outside the top 100 in returning production, and they were not great last year. So I just think this is not as traditionally good of a team as you see at App State, and I think that's going to play out in this game. At the quarterback position, obviously we don't have official depth charts for this game. Again, I could go on a long rant about official depth charts and why coaches aren't providing them, but I can't stand it. But AJ Swan, transfer from Vanderbilt, is likely to be the starter. He's not mobile, and Dowell Loggins is very likely to make this like a vertical passing game offense now that he has a quarterback that's not mobile. I don't think it's a great spot for him. His fantasy upside is going to be very limited to what he can do with his arm. With a new cast of characters around him, new offensive system, I just don't think it's a recipe for a whole lot of success. Where I think App might have some success is in running the football. Kanye Roberts has already been declared out for this game, which makes the situation a little clearer. It'll either be Rashad Dubinion or Khalifa Keith at the running back position, both of whom are transfers from SEC schools, Dubinion from Arkansas and Keith from Tennessee. I don't know if it's really all that profitable of a situation to target, though. Like, Charlotte's run defense is meh, but you got to figure out which running back it's going to be. And I don't know if you really want to do that with this team. So it's probably a situation I'm avoiding. The wide receiver position, I have no clue how this shakes out. They returned Dalton Stroman. He's their best returning piece. And then you've also got Jaden Barnes, who transfers in from Austin Peay, who was quite successful. I'd venture a guess that those two are going to be involved, but I don't really know much after that. So unless we get an official depth chart or unless we get like a beat reporter like saying who the starters are in warmups, I'm just not interested in that situation. Now, on the Charlotte side, I do have some interest here. So they've got a new coach in Tim Albin coming in from Ohio. A lot of success at Ohio, like really good G5 coach. And look, considering for Charlotte, our last two head coaches have been like a 30-year-old Eric Taylor wannabe in Will Healy, and then a guy in Biff Poggi that is like not your traditional football coach. Charlotte's now got a football coach in Tim Albin, a guy who has a track record of being a head coach in G5 programs and winning games. I think this is going to be good. They had a massive turnover of players, but I think as a whole, the roster has improved. A lot went out and a lot came in, and I think what came in was as good as what went out. Last year, Albin's offense ran the ball a lot, ranked 11th in rush rate. It was because they had a mobile quarterback. Albin loves him some mobile quarterbacks, and now they've got Connor Harrell, who's a transfer from North Carolina. He started a few games for them over his career. He has a ton of rushing upside. I don't think he's bad. I think he's a really good G5 quarterback, and I think at $6,600, he's really worth a look here on this slate. I think that's a great system fit, and I don't think App's defense is built to stop what they're going to do. At the running back position, this is where it's kind of a mess for Charlotte. We don't have an official depth chart. Don Chaney, who was a transfer from Louisville, transferred out after spring practice. He was going to be the RB1. So now what you have is you have Rod Gainey and CJ Stokes, who are holdovers from the Poggi regime. You've got Cam Smith, who's coming over from WIU, Western Illinois. And then you've got Henry Rutledge, who's a converted receiver who played a passing down role last year. It's just a lot. I would say if I was handicapping it, Stokes is probably the most talented. He's a former Michigan transfer, but I'm not dipping my toes in these waters for DFS. At the wide receiver position, I'm willing to play one guy, and that's Jaden McGowan. He's transferring over from Boston College. He's the expected wide receiver one. All the beat writers have been hyping him up, how he's the best receiver in the room. They also get back Justin Olson and Sean Brown from last year. Olson was hurt about very early last year, turns out. I feel like he played more games than that, but he was hurt quite early. And then Sean Brown last year was a guy who really came on strong at the end of the season. They're possibly worth looks, in my opinion. But I'm really looking to play Harrell, and because of his dual threat upside, I really think you can play him unstacked. I think playing a cheap quarterback like Harrell really does unlock a lot of things on this slate too. So I really like that strategy. Game number 2's got another quarterback that I like. It's another game being played in the state of North Carolina. This one's about 20 minutes from my front door. Wake Forest taking on Kennesaw State. So this game, Wake Forest is 16.5-point favorites with a game total of 51.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 33-18 in favor of the Deacs. So for this one, Kennesaw State, they were one of the worst teams in all of FBS football last year. They hired an NFL running backs coach, Jerry Mack, to come in, and their new OC was formerly Tennessee's quarterbacks coach, but apparently they're not running like the veer and shoot Josh Heupel offense. They're running the pistol, like reminiscent of Nevada in the Chris Alt era. I don't have a whole lot of expectations for this Kennesaw State team. But what I can say is that they have a legitimate FBS quarterback now in Dexter Williams. He's a transfer from Indiana and Georgia State as well. He's a legitimate quarterback. Like, he's much better than what they had last year. I think as a whole, this team's probably going to be pretty bad, but I think in terms of G5 quarterbacks go, he's far from the worst. He's actually an FBS player, unlike a lot of their roster last year, which is FCS players. $5,900, I'm still not into it, though. Running back position, Coleman Bennett is now projected to be the RB1. Not interested. Wide receiver position, Banyard is apparently the wide receiver one. Moss, Rivera, and Jackson are all listed as the starters. Look, they're cheap. They're real cheap. But, man, like, I don't know. I just don't know. Like, Wake's defense might be improved with Jake Dickert coming in. They're only implied to score 18 points. You can throw darts at them. There's worse darts you can throw, but I'm probably not going to. On the Wake side, I already mentioned they've got Jake Dickert coming in, but don't think that because he was at Washington State means that they're going to run the Washington State John Mateer offense. Ben Arbuckle, the OC, went to Oklahoma. They did hire Rob Ezell, most famously, the guy who did the Nick Saban impression on like the Alabama Hard Knocks show that ESPN had in the mid 2010s. Go look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. And he was the OC at South Alabama last year for Major Applewhite, and they ran up tempo and they ran the ball quite a bit. I think that's a great fit for what this Wake program has right now. Robbie Ashford is going to be the starter, and he is a insane athlete, former Auburn quarterback, former South Carolina quarterback, elite level athlete. It's always been his accuracy that's kind of failed him at both of those stops. And now he's at Wake Forest. This should be a little easier for him because he's going up against a really bad defense. They're going to use his legs. He can really just out-athlete them. I think this is a good spot for him. He's going to make some of my lineups at $7,400. At the running back position, Damon Claiborne, in my opinion, is the slate's RB1. He is just like such a sure thing at the running back position, and he comes with a ton of upside because he has home run speed to break off explosive runs. Last year, 228 carries. That's about 20 a game, honestly. And he had plenty of home run hits. Like he had 7 games of over 21 fantasy points last year. So you're getting a guy that not only has consistent volume to bank on, not only has a great matchup in a team that is vastly overmatched, taking him on in a home game nonetheless. But you also have a guy who has a legitimate ceiling. Like this is just such a good play in my opinion, and he's going to make a ton of my lineups. At the wide receiver spot, all the starting wide receivers got the OR designation on their official depth chart. Micah Mays and Carlos Hernandez do have the most pedigree. Hernandez is coming over from Washington State. Micah Mays was a big-time recruit that they were really happy to get and showed some flashes as a freshman. Those are probably the only two that I'm going to be going with, given that with that OR designation, it looks like they're going to be rotating a lot of guys. Funny enough, we just did 2 games, both of whom all new head coaches, all 4 head coaches so far, new ones. And I think those might be there's not a whole lot more of those on the slate, but it's wild that both those were in the first 2 games. Anyway, we've got Western Michigan taking on Michigan State now. And this one's going to be pretty interesting. It's in-state rivalry. Actually, I take that back. It's probably not going to be that interesting. Michigan State's 20.5 point favorites. Game total of 49.5 points. Implied score is Michigan State 35, Western Michigan 14. Not a great spot for Western Michigan. They're likely to be starting Brock Lowry, who's formerly an Indiana transfer, but apparently they're splitting time. Can't play that in DFS. At running back, Jalen Buckley returns. Cole Cabana is a Michigan transfer who's apparently hurt. He was supposed to be kind of the 1-2 punch Thunder and Lightning duo. But if he's hurt, Jalen Buckley's going to be getting all the carries, but does it even mean a whole lot going up against a Michigan State defense that's going to be able to overpower Western Michigan's front line? The wide receiver position, it's pretty bad. Blake Bosma's a tight end. He's a pretty good tight end, honestly. But other than that, their receivers are a bunch of transfers and a bunch of guys who didn't really shine last year. Talik Williams from Georgia State, Christian Leary from Georgia Tech, Malik Dudon, who was not all that productive for this team last year. I see nothing worth noting in DFS purposes. On the Michigan State side, so here's the deal with Michigan State. I am a long-term believer in Jonathan Smith as a head coach. I'm a long-term believer in Aiden Childs' talent. This is a good spot to target him in. He's $7,500. That's a reasonable price tag. Last year, the offensive line really let him down. He just pressured all the time. I feel like every time I was watching a Michigan State game, he was just taking a beating. It should be better this year. It should certainly be better in this game going up against a G5 opponent. I think he's really got some low-owned GPP appeal here on this slate. The running back position, we don't have a depth chart for this game, so we don't really know who it's going to be. Tal Tolliver is coming over from Sacramento State. If that sounds familiar, it's where Cam Skattebo came from. But I don't think he's Cam Skattebo, and I think it's going to be a committee, probably a pass for me. The running back position, Nick Marsh is the unquestioned wide receiver 1. Jack Velling is the unquestioned tight end 1. They did get 2 appealing transfers, though, in Amari Kelly from Middle Tennessee and Krishan McCray from Kent State. Both those guys have really good numbers coming in because they were all their offense had last year. And so we know they can command targets on a bad team. Can they command targets on a good team? We'll see. But Nick Marsh was the guy last year and looks to be the guy again this year. If I was playing Aiden Childs, I'm probably going to play him at least stacked with one of Marsh or Velling. If you're feeling frisky, you can try Kelly or McCray, but I would rather play Marsh. All right, we're 3 games in. We're going to go ahead and take a quick breather right there, and we're going to get on with the rest of these games. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I am more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me, as well as it's where I tweet out all updates for the show. For these first weeks, if there's any depth chart news or anything like that that contradicts what I say on here, I try to tweet it out and make sure I get that awareness out there. But for the most part, that's just where you can find all the updates for the show and ask me questions if you like. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as in the audio feed. It's a place where a bunch of really smart, really good people talk DFS for a lot of different sports, and college football is one of them. If you're looking to grow your DFS community or just looking for people to sweat it out with and just have fun, just chatting it up, join the Fantasy Corner Discord. I cannot recommend it enough. And then also, if you want to know who actually makes my college football DFS lineups, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. For every single slate, tweet out my core plays for DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as kind of my slate strategy and slate plan. So if you're interested in that, the Patreon is the place you can go for that. Either click the football package or the all sports package. All right, let's carry on with game number 4. This one is a banger. Like the 8 p.m. games on this slate, straight bangers, right? We've got Arkansas taking on Baylor. This one, I'm going to be honest with y'all, I've got a bet on this game already. I'm taking the Tigers. I'm a believer in this Auburn team. The spread is currently Auburn -2.5 with a game total of 57.5. We might get weather in this game. Make sure you're on the lookout for that. If it gets rainy, that could really throw a wrench in things for both these offenses. But right now, the total is 57.5, which is the second highest on the slate. That means the implied score is about 30-28 in favor of Auburn. Let's talk about the Auburn side. So Jackson Arnold comes in as the starter, and he was a disappointment for Oklahoma last year. He was a very highly touted recruit. They were really excited about him, and he didn't get the job done. He was kind of hampered by confidence issues and just kind of like a lack of command of the offense. But I would have confidence issues too if I didn't have anybody quality to throw to or anybody blocking for me. Like that was a really poor supporting cast around him. Now at Auburn, he's got a great supporting cast. He's got a great matchup. I think this Baylor pass defense is quite poor. We played guys against them multiple times last season. I think this is a great game to game stack. I think Auburn's a great team to team stack. And I think Arnold is a great individual quarterback play here on this slate. At the running back position, Damari Alston has been listed as the starter on the depth chart. So he's pretty unproven. We don't know a whole lot about him. I think this Baylor team is much easier to be attacked through the air, so I'm probably not playing the Auburn running back here in this one. Now, speaking of Auburn attacking through the air, they've got some appealing options. First off is Cam Coleman. In a world where Jeremiah Smith didn't exist, we will be talking about Cam Coleman like he is the next great wide receiver prospect, because he is, and he really came on strong at the end of last season. 2 games of 34 fantasy points or more in the last 3. All 3 of them were 20 fantasy points or more. He's got a ton of upside. He's very good at football. He's $7,900, which is expensive. But like I was saying earlier, you can play a cheap quarterback like a Harrell or like an Ashford. You can find cheap running backs, cheap wide receivers that will allow you to fit him in. If you don't want to play an expensive Auburn wide receiver, there's Malcolm Simmons, who's an option at $4,500. There's Eric Singleton, the Georgia Tech transfer, who they're really excited about, who's $3,600. He's dealing with an injury. He was really good for Georgia Tech last year. I played him all the time. And I think he's a really talented player. And he's $3,600. That's a misprice if he's 100%. But we don't know if he's 100%. If he were to miss time, Horatio Fields, who's a Wake Forest transfer, might see some snaps. I think he's worth a look at $3,500 if we get any kind of funky Singleton out or Singleton not running with the stars or anything like that. That's a very easy late swap down from Singleton to Fields. And that's something you should be considering if you are rostering Eric Singleton. Now, on the Baylor side, like I said, I think this is a great game to game stack because I think this Baylor offense has some pieces as well. Sawyer Robertson, it's a good quarterback. I think he's a little bit pricey. So Sawyer Robertson last year, if you watched him in the Big 12, was not great when he was under pressure, under duress. He was really good against some of the mediocre Big 12 defenses out there, but against the ones that would blitz him, against the ones that would send heat at him, didn't always look the best. So what does that mean for this one? Auburn's going to be able to get pressure, y'all. Auburn's got some really good pieces on that front 7. So I'm a little worried about Robertson. I think there's a high range of outcomes. I think even if he doesn't play well, there's a chance he could still give you a good fantasy performance because of the fact that this Baylor offense is going to throw a lot. This game is going to feature a lot of points. So maybe he doesn't need to play well for you to play him in DFS. I think he's probably going to make my player pool. I'd rather play Arnold on the other side, but I do think there's merit in playing Robertson. He's got a ton of upside. Just look at what he did last year, and he can really go off at any time. Now, at the running back spot, Bryson Washington is going to be Baylor's workhorse this year because Dawson Pendergrass is now out for the year. Washington is a guy who did piece together 2 50-point performances last year as a true freshman. So we know he's got a ton of upside, but hey, this is an SEC defense, and I think he's a little bit overpriced personally. I'd rather play Damon Claiborne. If the matchup were better, I'd love to be in on Washington. I've drafted him in a ton of best balls. I think he's a great player. I think he's a great general fantasy running back, but not against an SEC opponent on the first week of the season. At the wide receiver position, y'all, this Baylor offense frustrated me to no end last year trying to figure out which receiver I wanted to target on a given week, right? Good news is so many of those other guys are gone that now it seems like it's going to be a little easier. Josh Cameron is going to be the wide receiver 1. He ended the season really strongly for Baylor, had some big-time performances for them last year. No question about it, he's going to be their guy. Cole Wilson, transfer from Texas State. He was pretty good at Texas State, y'all. Don't get it twisted. He is going to be starting as well. He was pretty good at Texas State. So, I really think he's worth a look at $4,200. Michael Trigg is the tight end. He was solid last year. I think he's at a reasonable price tag for his role in the offense. And then Ashton Hawkins was granted a 7th year of eligibility, and he is now able to play at a salary of $3,700. I think he also came from Texas State, come to think of it. So you got 3 starting wide receivers and a tight end that are all targetable. Hawkins and Wilson, super cheap. I'm definitely going to be getting all those guys into my player pool. Because like I said, I think this is a great game to stack. I think this is just a really good opportunity to invest in 2 good offenses here in this Auburn-Baylor game. All right, next up, we've got what might be considered the game of the night. If you don't consider Auburn-Baylor the game of the night, you're going to really like this one. It's Georgia Tech taking on Colorado. Georgia Tech is 4.5-point favorites with a game total of 52.5, meaning the implied score is about 28-24 in favor of the Yellow Jackets. Y'all, I could see this game going a million different ways. I just don't know how it's going to go. What I do know, though, is the Haynes King of Georgia Tech is my favorite quarterback on the slate. The guy put up 56 fantasy points against Georgia last year. How could you not love him? He's a guy that is a dual threat. The entire Georgia offense runs through him. He's got a ton of upside, and Colorado is a team that should be playing with a decent tempo, should be, plenty of possessions in this game, plenty of opportunities for King to put up fantasy points, plenty of opportunities for King to score touchdowns. Love it. At the running back position, Jamal Haynes isn't necessarily the biggest bruising running back. He isn't going to wow you with a volume of carries, but he is a home run hitter. He almost had 1,000 yards last year. He had multiple long runs for touchdowns last year, including a game winner at UNC after Haynes King got hurt. And this game, Colorado is not exactly known for their run defense. So there's a chance he could break off a long one. And oh, by the way, he gets some usage in the passing game as well. So I think this is a pretty good spot for Jamal Haynes. I think you can play Haynes and Haynes together with a quarterback and running back stack. I think you can play him as a one-off. I think you can play him as a game stack piece. I like both Hayneses here on this slate. The wide receiver position, Georgia Tech does have to replace Eric Singleton. Malik Rutherford returns. He was pretty solid for them last year. Never really gave huge big time performances. He was just kind of the low ADOT volume guy, which might not be the guy you'd want to target in a GPP. If for that, you'd probably want Eric Rivers, who comes over from FIU. Y'all, I was wrong about Chris Mitchell last year, but I'm doubling down. I think Eric Rivers is going to be good. Transferring up from FIU to Georgia Tech, I think his skill set will transfer to the Power 4 level. I just think he's a good wide receiver. He's $6,100, great stacking partner with Haynes King. Y'all, I mentioned this on the Saturday show. Go check that out if you've not already. But when you talk about stacking in college football DFS, you want the stack to be easy to get right. Because if you're playing a lot of lineups, then you can devote more lineups to that or less lineups to that stack with having more exposure to the players that you have in the stack, right? Like if I want to play 20 Georgia Tech stacks, for example, I can do all 20 of Eric Rivers and have multiple different combinations that give me more outs to win if that stack does in fact work out. If I were to play 20, let's say, Michigan State stacks, and I were to want to play Marsh and Kelly and McCray, and I do 7-7-7, then I'm giving myself less outs that if one of those stacks works, then I'm very going to have a narrow pathway to win with my other plays, right? So I really like the fact that we're pretty confident that Rivers is going to be the number one wide receiver, pretty confident he's going to be the guy. And if that works, you got yourself a good stack. Now, on the Colorado side, they're interesting because I don't know what they're going to do on offense. They have Caden Salter at quarterback now. He is primarily a running quarterback, not a passing quarterback like they've had in Shedeur Sanders. That's a total 180 from what they've done the last 2 years. So I don't know what to expect. I don't know what they're going to do. What I do know is that Salter, one way or another, can rack up fantasy points in a hurry. He was much better for Liberty in 2023 than in 2024. And if we see 2023 locked in, engaged Caden Salter, then he could put up a lot of fantasy points in this one. I think this is a very viable game stacking opportunity here in this one. At the running back position for Colorado, it would stand to reason that if Caden Salter is going to cause them to be more run heavy, they're probably going to run with the running backs more, right? Which is not something they've done the last 2 years. Dallin Hayden is doubtful for this game. So if he's not suiting up, it's probably going to be Micah Welch just starting at running back at $4,800. They also brought in DeKalon Taylor. I hope I'm saying that correctly, from Incarnate Word. He was highly productive at Incarnate Word. I don't know what the running back situation looks like if Hayden misses. That makes it tough to target, but it does stand to reason that Salter being active might increase their rush rate a little bit. At the wide receiver position, I don't think DraftKings has the pricing right, y'all. I'm going to be honest. Everybody's sold on Joseph Williams because he comes over from Tulsa, because he had a few big games as a freshman. But I don't know. That was an offense that threw the ball over the yard. He was going up against bad defenses. I don't know about him. Draymond Miller and Amarion Miller both did it at Colorado last year. Both had some splash plays in splash games. I would rather target the two of them, but it kind of goes back to the same point of like, hey, who's it going to be? I don't know. It makes it a tougher situation to target, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be one of those three we just mentioned. All right, next up, the penultimate game of the night. We've got UNLV taking on Sam Houston State. Both of these teams played in week 0, so we have a sample size for both these teams to go off of. The current spread is UNLV minus 10. Game total is 62.5, meaning the implied total is about 36-26 in favor of the Runnin' Rebels. On the UNLV side, they play a split quarterback between Calandria and Orgy. Can't play it. Just can't in DFS. You want your quarterback to be playing 100% of the snaps. You can't deal with a split quarterback. At the running back position, Jaden Thomas was great for them in that game against Idaho State. Granted, it was against Idaho State, but this is a good running back who's been productive with them for multiple years. In that game, he had 10 carries for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sam Houston State defense looked awful against Western Kentucky. Granted, Western Kentucky did it mostly through the air, but they kind of ran on them whenever they wanted to as well. I think Jaden Thomas is in a really good spot. He's one of my favorite running backs on the slate. At the wide receiver position, you have got a situation where JoJo Earl has the highest pedigree. Troy Omeir is also a guy that's supposed to be pretty good, but in week 1, it was Jaden Bradley that led them in receiving, had 7 targets, caught 6 of them for 131 yards. Could that be the guy? I don't know, but at $3,700, it's worth it to find out. On the Sam Houston side, they started Hunter Watson at quarterback, and he did Hunter Watson things, right? Like, he threw for 209 yards, and he also ran for 91 yards and a touchdown. Was very close to getting another touchdown as well. Not bad. I think he's definitely worth a look here in this one in a game that is very stackable. At the running back position, it was very much a committee. McCaskill was the leading rusher. Elijah Green actually was their leading receiver, had caught a lot of passes through the air. I think both of them are playable, if I'm being honest. UNLV's defense did not look great against Idaho State. At receiver, this is where it was a mess from Sam Houston. They played a ton of guys. They threw to a ton of guys. There was varying levels of success. It was kind of a mess. None of them ended up getting home for fantasy. The guy I would play here in this one is Avion Smith-Mack. Led them in targets, was also the slot, which is the position you want to be in Phil Longo's offense. I think he's worth a $3,100 dart throw here on this slate. Last game here of the night is going to be Central Michigan taking on San Jose State. This one has San Jose State favored by 12.5 points with a game total of 51.5, meaning the implied score is about 32-19 in favor of the Aztecs. On the Central Michigan side, we do have a depth chart for them. It is going to be, hold on, I'm pulling it up. It is going to be Joe Labas, a quarterback who is a veteran of the system. I'm not very intrigued, but this is a game worth stacking, maybe. So he might be. I'm not talking myself into it. I'm not going to play him. I am interested at the running back position, though. Trey Cornish, is listed as the starting running back. Not a big sample size of him being very effective, but I just think that you're going to be able to run on this San Jose State team. I think that this game's going to feature some points. So Trey Cornish might make my player pool. At the wide receiver position, they do have 3 starters of Tommy McIntosh, Langston Lewis, and Tyson Davis. Tyson Davis was pretty good for them 2 years ago. I would be inclined to think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 this year. McIntosh and Lewis are largely unproven. It's a tough situation because you don't really know who it's going to be, but there's going to be some points scored in this game. So I think I am going to be taking my shots on Cornish and Davis here on the Central Michigan side. Now, on the San Jose State side, it is year 2 of the Ken Niumatalolo spread and shred offense, where they ranked first in the nation in pass rate last year. They ranked near the top in tempo, and it's not what I was expecting from a Ken Niumatalolo team, I'll tell you that, but it's what they did. They were a spread team that threw the ball over the yard and played at a fast tempo, and Walker Eget was the quarterback who got to pilot it. And don't be fooled by his points per game average on DraftKings. It's skewed because he didn't start all those games. He took over kind of near the end of the year. Once he took over, he was pretty good. 3 of his last 4 games were over 23 DraftKings points. This is a good matchup for them. The high implied total. I'm in on Eget here on this slate, and I think you're going to want to play him stacked. Floyd Chalk is the running back for them. He's tough. He's probably not going to be chalk on this DFS slate. Haha, I made a pun. But I'm not super interested because they're going to throw the ball over the yard. And when they do, they're going to throw it to a combination of receivers. So let me go in order. Matthew Coleman is the name that you might know because he tore it up in the bowl game last year against USF. He was kind of playing the Nick Nash role. Nick Nash was one of the best receivers in all college football last year, probably the best commodity in DFS football at the wide receiver position. And it was rumored in the offseason that Matthew Coleman was going to be the new Nick Nash, right? Well, he wasn't listed as a starter on the opening depth chart. It was instead Malachi Riley and Leland Smith. Leland Smith, who was coming over from Purdue. And then it was Danny Scudero, who's coming over from Sacramento State. Scudero is the one who is getting all of the hype in camp with the beat writers, with everybody who's around the team. He could be the new Nick Nash. I'm willing to take my chances on playing him on this slate because Nick Nash, y'all got to understand, y'all might remember this. He was like a 10K play last year. So if one of these guys ends up being Nick Nash 2025, you want to find them, and you want to find them quick before their price gets up. This week's a great opportunity to do it. I'm going to be playing definitely some combinations of those San Jose State wide receivers. Because like I said, they were first in the nation in pass rate. Even if you don't get Nick Nash production, you're going to get a ton of passes and a ton of volume. All right, but that is going to do it here for the Friday night slate. I told you guys it was going to be a little quicker. I stuck to my word there because, like I said, some missing official depth charts and some less games. Because let me tell you, I did all the research for the 12-game slate for Saturday, and holy cow, that's a lot of prep when you got to find all those depth charts and all those stats for 24 different teams. This one was only 14. It was a little more casual, let's say. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Reminder, if you do want more from me, follow me on Twitter, join the Fantasy Corner Discord, check out the Patreon. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you can be here with us for the live show Thursday night, where we're going to talk about the Saturday main slate. And then you can be with us for the rest of our college football DFS content for the rest of the season. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it. And if you're listening on audio, you can rate and review, and I really appreciate those as well. But that is going to do it for this episode, y'all. Like I said, I'm so hyped that college football is back. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. And we've got a full weekend slate of football Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where all should be good. This Friday slate in particular, I'm really going to enjoy. Going to be watching my Niners take on App State. Hopefully they get the W. And we'll see how it goes. And then obviously, no matter how Friday goes, we're going to have Saturday, which is going to be glorious. So, yeah, hopefully we gave you guys all the information you need to build some winning DFS lineups for Friday. So that way you're playing with your profits on Saturday instead of chasing on Saturday. But thank you guys for watching and listening to this point. Best of luck to you guys on the Friday DFS slate, and I will see you guys next time.